Join me for a chat with Ludo, the CEO of Newcamp Coding Bootcamp, to discover why Newcamp is an excellent choice for beginners. If you're in the market for a bootcamp, here are a couple of reasons I chose Newcamp. One, it's affordable. Because it's so affordable, it is the perfect place for a beginner to explore their interests. Are you a front-end dev, a back-end dev, or both? It's flexible. Newcamp's curriculum accommodates an individual with a 9-to-5. So no, you do not have to quit your job to pursue your web development dreams. And if you're a little like me and require some hand-holding, this is a perfect place to be. They've got a ratio of 12 students to 1 instructor, which means a lot of quality time with that person. And last but not least is their professional services, career services, and job placement services, which included one-on-one mentorship. It also included hands-on help with your resume and access to their exclusive job board. But that's enough from me. Let's hear from Ludo. Ludo, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Theresa. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to our chat. So is that the place that you show in your video where you go outside on the deck and you have that amazing view?
Yes, that is the place. I am located in rural Colorado, up in Cotopaxi, about 8,000 feet high is where my
8,000?
8,000 feet high. And so not a lot of oxygen out here, but the view is amazing.
I was going to say, that's pretty tough.
I'm happy I decided to become a web developer.
Yeah, imagine that. So if people don't know what we're talking about regarding your view, you have a video on your YouTube channel, right? Where I think you're exercising outside on your deck.
Yes.
Yeah, that view is just, wow, breathtaking.
Yeah, it's actually insane because when I started this whole journey, my dream was to have a remote job and to be working remotely on this property. And it's now my life. So it's insane.
Oh, so you had scouted that place before and you were like, this is where I'm going to live next?
Yep, I scouted this place. I wanted to live here, but I knew it would only be possible with a remote job. And so I started looking at remote jobs. And of course, web developers always have remote jobs. So that's one of the reasons I decided to pursue this field.
Oh, that's brilliant. So, well, let me get this straight. So you didn't join Newcamp, I guess, when you were like, okay, I need a remote job that pays enough to go in to live there with that beautiful view. And then you went through that journey and got it.
Yeah, that is exactly what happened. It's almost too good to be true. About 3 years ago, I was on vacation and I came up with this idea to build an app that would kind of gamify the way people look at their carbon footprint. That was the goal, because I was on a beach and the beach was filthy. And I was like, if only we could make environmental friendliness fun. So I thought of this app that would give you badges and stickers and all the bells and whistles when you did things that were good for the environment. So I set off on a path to try and build that app, and that led me to Newcamp, and that led me to here.
Oh, that's awesome.
What is your unpopular tech opinion?
So my unpopular tech opinion, geez, I didn't think of that. But I would say, So there's one that I've been struggling with, and I actually got feedback on that. And it's about commenting your code.
Oh.
And the reason is, when I write code, I really make sure that every function name, variable name is meaningful.
Yeah.
And so when I read code myself, it's like I'm reading English. Because all those names, if you're testing for something to be true, the name of the variable is going to be the English name for the variable.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, if I had to comment that, I would pretty much rewrite exactly the same thing, because if you read it,
it reads as English.
It reads as English. And so I'm very confused about that concept. And of course, when you have big algorithms, right, you want to explain, I guess you really want to explain why you're doing it the way you're doing, or you want to explain if something really is surprising in the code, like you're doing something that you're doing it because something else is happening somewhere and you want to remember that. But a lot of times I find that most of your code just should read like English. And then what's really the point of commenting it? I don't know. It's kind of, it feels bizarre.
So what opinions did you get on that? You said you got some feedback.
Well, I got feedback because someone was looking at my code and was like, dude, where are the comments? You need to have comments in there. And that was right. So I'm making an effort now to comment it. And mostly it's kind of visually pleasing to see, blocks of comments before a function that say, hey, that function does this. But I'm like, still, I'm like, okay, I'm going to add comments, but really first you have to, you have to maintain your code twice in a way, because you have to maintain your code and then you have to maintain the comment of the code.
If you change anything.
Yeah.
Opposite of you, I loved writing comments so that when I go back a couple of months later, I'm like, oh, this is what I was trying to do. And then I got my first real tech job working on a huge platform with a lot of other developers. And I expected to see a bunch of comments everywhere, but comments are actually not allowed in your code. Your code speak for itself. So
that's the rule at your company?
That is the rule at my company.
That's my kind of company then.
No, there are one-off cases, like you said, if you're doing something absolutely complex and the next person coming along will absolutely not know what you're saying, and go ahead and write a comment, but comments are not allowed. I would love to know how Newcamp came into existence. Like I was searching for boot camps for the longest time before I ran into Newcamp. So how did you guys pop up?
So it starts with kind of my background, I guess. So I studied as a developer in France during the V1 of the internet, I will say, without trying to make me too.
Don't date yourself.
But yeah, I did experience the first, big internet crash they talked about, and then I moved from coding to helping others code and training them. And when I left Microsoft, I was looking after the Microsoft technical certifications. Mm-hmm. But it was actually primarily two things for me. First, well, I'm going to say it. I spent 18 years at Microsoft before leaving. Mm-hmm. And when I started, I promised myself that I will never do that. That I will never stay in one company more than, and I didn't put a number behind it. But I was always worried and afraid that by staying too long at one company, that you will kind of lose your edge, that you would lose, you will stop challenging yourself, you will stop learning, stop growing. And that there was that moment when I was still a student. And I remember I was in a very small, student type of startup at the time, but nothing major. And we were working or supplying services to IBM at the time. And I remember getting into those big IBM offices and the IBM, chairs and big desks. And I was like, I will never be that guy. I will never be that guy that works for 20 years at IBM. That was my thing, when I was 20 years old. And then, 18 years after staying at Microsoft, I was like, man, I am that guy. I am that guy.
I've turned into that guy.
I'm turning into that guy. And that kind of gave me the fire to seek something else. And so I was really thinking, hey, I need to challenge myself. And the coding bootcamp industry was just starting at the time. And I was in that industry, right? I had learning experience. I had technical certification experience. I didn't code for about 15 years. Like I stopped coding myself for about 15 years. But I had spent enough time building online learning experiences to know the benefit of that and the pitfall of that. And so online learning experiences can be super high quality. You can have great content. It's very affordable. It's super cheap. But what I knew as well is, well, first, after a few weeks, 70% of your audience will drop off.
Oh,
that's true. And then most people actually will never finish and never actually accomplish it. And there were a ton of studies at the time, and that's back 2016 was that time, right? plenty of studies around what was called MOOC and are still called MOOC, Massive Open Online Curriculum. That said that only 3% of learners were actually completing what they set to achieve just by going online.
I have a Vue course that I've been doing on Udemy since May.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to pay attention to it. I am struggling, I won't lie. So what kind of online experiences were you creating before Newcamp? Were you just courses on YouTube, on Udemy?
So it was actually internal to Microsoft, but it was a top-notch online experience with big MBA universities. So I had partnerships with Wharton, London Business School, INSEAD, and I was producing really high-end content for the Microsoft sales force and technical force at the time.
But you were ready. You were ready.
Oh, yeah. So really top-notch stuff and really thinking about what's the best online learning experience for a working professional, right? So very much what Newcamp is about. It's, hey, we have, at Microsoft, we had a field of sellers and technical sellers that were just busy during the week. And yet we wanted them to learn the basics of business, engaging with companies at a different level than just technical. So I was building those programs. And so, yeah. And so I saw, I mean, I had that experience. I saw what coding bootcamps were doing. And what coding bootcamps were doing at the time, I found really inspiring, but also there was a disappointment that they're going after the product, the problem in a very traditional way. Yeah. You know, we're going to have a campus, we're going to hire full-time faculty members, we're going to charge a lot of money. And when I was thinking about the problem, and I was like, you know, there is not a lot that's missing in an online experience to make it really, really sticky and really great. And what's missing is the human connection, right? It's being in a real classroom. It's being able to meet with your classmates, having an instructor with you that really, and we call it the social learning type of dynamic, where suddenly the reason why you're going to learn is not because you set a goal to yourself, or not just that. It's because now you are part of a structure, a social structure, and you rely on one another and you learn with one another, and you have an instructor that supports you. I mean, all of that is what makes learning actually possible. Yes. Yeah. And so I did that. So I was the first instructor for about a year.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I taught the curriculum. And at first, I've shared that in a few podcasts, but I'll say it again. The first curriculum for Newcamp was from Coursera. So when really I just started and I didn't know if it was going to be great, I didn't have a curriculum. And so I, created that structure, 12 students, one instructor, and that was me, just leveraging the Coursera curriculum. And that worked great. So people were really happy. They graduated. Mm-hmm. And that's when we went from one city in Tacoma to 5 in the state of Washington to 35 and now 180.
Yes. And I think the things that set Newcamp apart from other boot camps are, I'll let you say, what are the things that set Newcamp aside? I think personally it's the cost. You cannot beat the cost at Newcamp. I needed something that wasn't going to break the bank, wasn't going to put me back in student debt, and didn't require me to quit my job, and all the good stuff that Newcamp has to offer. So tell us what sets Newcamp aside from the average boot camp.
Well, I think you're right. I think the very first thing that people see is the cost. And it's actually a double-edged sword, because first they're intrigued and interested, and then they're like, well, that seems too real to be too good to be true.
That's what I thought as well.
But it's like, hold on.
That is what I thought as well.
And I mean, I think we have that a little bit less, but I think it's kind of natural. People kind of think that at first. And we explain, how it's possible, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, the cost for sure. So people will come for the cost, but then a lot of the people are going to review not on the cost, but they're going to write their review to thank the environment, right? They're going to say, hey, love the community, loved my fellow classmates, and then a lot of people are going to talk about their instructor. And so they come for the cost, they hope for the best, that is, and they're like, okay, it's real. And then the feedback is, I really like the learning experience and having, that structure around me. That's pretty much what we're finding.
When I started, my instructor kind of told us how difficult this would be, and that we weren't all going to make it because some of us would find out that this is just not what we're interested in. And I wanted nothing but for me and all my classmates to make it to the end. So that camaraderie is also there. You're calling each other up, like, have you solved this question yet? You're not just there online by yourself in your room trying to figure it out. You have classmates, you've got an instructor. We now have COVID. How has that impacted the way Newcamp operates? Do we still have in-person Saturday classes?
Yeah, so we don't, unfortunately. And it was so we did the switch back in March 2020, when everything went terribly wrong, I will say. We made a change at that same time, and I think so. Remind me, actually, when did you graduate?
March of 2020.
So
I was one of the last cohorts.
Oh wow, yeah. So you did still experience the in-person workshops. So you remember as well that we used to use Daily Co, I think, instead of Zoom.
Yes.
And it was kind of okay at the time because everybody was actually meeting in person. So the online experience wasn't that critical to running the workshop.
Yes.
But when we decided to, hold our workshops or Saturday workshops online as well, we also decided to switch to Zoom, which was more robust, offered breakout rooms, and we weren't really sure if we could make the experience the same or feel as good. Yeah. And I'll say nothing beats, to be honest, being in person with your classmates and your instructor, right? It's just different. That structure, that emotional connection that you build with others, it's hard to reproduce. But I think we still did a good job of maintaining first the ratio. So we still have, even though it's online, and we could say, hey, now it's 36 students per instructor. We don't do that. So we kept it 12 students maximum for one instructor. And that's kind of small enough that you still find people, in a very small group getting to know one another. The thing that we're asking students to do, and it's a little bit controversial, but there's a reason. We're asking them to have their camera on. We really, and we're kind of asking, and we're persevering in asking them that you have to have your camera on. And the reason is, when I see you, you see me, right? You read my body language, I read yours. And we're going for that connection, right? That connection that you make with your peers is going to be fuel for you to continue to learn and progress toward the curriculum. And so if you're just, a black box on the screen and the voice, you're not going to have that same relationship and same connection. And so you're losing on something that you could just have by switching your camera on. Now, there's many reasons why sometimes, students don't want to. I mean, they could be just getting out of bed or something. But as much as possible, we really want them to experience that personal connection via being able to see one another.
I agree with you. In this current virtual world that we live in, it's easy to turn your camera off and disengage. You have to try a little harder. You got to take photos, you got to send memes, you got to keep your camera on. Yeah. It's just a different way of engaging now than in person. And I'm kind of that person that always has my camera on. You would have to wake up and get ready if you were going to take a bus or take a cab to get to your work. You would still have to wake up and get ready. So why not wake up and get ready to work virtually?
Yeah, that's true. It's very true. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm happy that Newcamp has figured out a way to still keep the cost down and still keep students engaged. That is super awesome. I want to know what type of jobs graduates are getting now.
We're seeing a ton of students find job in small companies. And that's very much what we actually recommend them to seek. They are going to be local companies, even though they could be remote. It's going to be companies that are in their environment, in their state. And they're going to find junior web development position in those companies.
That's Fireside? started. That's how I started. I found a local organization here that was just doing I live in a small town, so everybody's website here in the small town was done by that company, Sagentic. Yeah. Big shout out to Sagentic for giving a junior dev a chance. And it was really nice to have a smaller space to just get your feet wet and kind of understand what you're getting into. So I agree.
We also have a partnership with Accenture where we're providing apprenticeship to students. And so we're starting to see actually great success from that. People really applying and getting apprenticeship with Accenture. We're also seeing the second job of graduates now. And so there's just a recent example of, actually, I know the name. She was also an instructor now, Stephanie Ramos, who got a job as a junior web developer. I can't remember which company, but then got her real dream job at Pixar. Ooh. Like a few weeks ago. And that's very much what people should expect. First, they should expect to grind a lot to get that first job, right? Yes. There's a ton of grind, there's a ton of patience, there's a ton of disappointments, that's going to be on your path. But at some point, you're going to get it. And most students are going to find their job within 6 months. So don't expect it to happen, the day of graduation or 3 months later. Of course, there's anecdotes that people get it, but 6 months is a good number, right? I don't know, how long did it take you?
I graduated in March and I got my first job in August.
So yeah, I think like 5 months. Yeah, there you go, you see. And so first job, that's going to be your entry job. And pretty much you should be ready to say yes to a lot of things, yes. Right? I mean, don't be picky. The point of your first job is you really want to have that first job on your resume. You really want that first experience on your resume because the next job is going to be much easier to get.
Yes.
Right? People will tell you there's really a lot of open positions, but there's really a lot of open positions for people with 3-4 years experience. So yes. You're getting into the market. It's going to be a grind. People are going to want to hire senior guy or gal. Are not going to find that person. So they're going to, then they're going to be like, okay, let's hire a junior person then. And that's going to be your chance, right? That's going to be when you're going to get that opportunity. And so you want to jump on it. Of course,
that first job is definitely critical. I agree. Yeah. I was not picky at all. I was throwing resumes out left, right, and center. It got to the point where I was like, did I apply to this person already? I had to start keeping a spreadsheet so I wouldn't reapply to the same job. I was pumping out the resumes. I'm like, anyone that wants to give me a chance, I am taking it.
Yeah.
I'm taking it. And that definitely helps me to get my dream job. I currently work on an e-commerce platform. Would not have believed that like a year plus after graduating that I would be working on an e-commerce platform. So that first job definitely gave me the confidence I needed to apply to jobs like those.
Yeah.
One final question for you.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to beginners?
I mean, you said it. If you don't know what you want to do first, right? And if you don't know if it's for you, start online. Start online because it's going to expose you to everything you need to be exposed in terms of the fundamentals, and you're going to have a sense if you like it or not, right? So go start with the basic stuff, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And if you're enjoying that journey,
yes,
then I think you may want to consider joining a bootcamp. What's going to be the case for 97% of the time is you're not going to complete. And I will be here to say that's okay. That's 97% of the time people don't complete what they're doing online. It doesn't mean it's not for you, right? That's not the reason to say, oh, I'm not going to do it because I wasn't able to finish my online course. Very often people need the structure of a coding bootcamp or regular school, right? They need the rhythm, they need the schedule, they need the students, they need the instructor. So start online, but as you realize that is for you, don't also get discouraged if you're not finishing stuff or if you're confused on what to do next. There's a ton of people chatting on the internet that's going to say, they talk about tutorial hell. Like you do so much online that you don't know that it adds up to anything. That's another problem. And so that's when you're like, okay, I really need structure. And so you're going to look for a coding bootcamp. And I will say, yeah, I mean, look at Newcamp, because what we're trying to do is really provide the comfort, the risk-free approach that you will find online, but then add to that all the support that will help you really finish what you're setting up to do. So that's very much for, how to get into it, I will say.
Yes.
And then it's making a habit. I mean, you've said it. You attended every Saturday workshop, and it's not easy to make a habit and learning on the side, right?
Yes.
Did you have a job? You were still a full-time employee when you?
I was still working full time. And I have to say that one of the warnings that Newcamp gives you, like in your first package, is basically, you have no life anymore. Tell your family and friends goodbye. So if you're locked away in your room, they know what you're doing. And
I wrote that. I wrote those things.
That could not have been more true, Ludo. I remember a friend asking me, I hadn't completed my coursework that I was supposed to submit Saturday before leaving class. And of course, you get these email reminders, hey, your coursework. And my friend hit me up and she's like, do you want to go shopping? I'm like, I can't. Be home and do my work.
Oh, so that's working. Nice. Yeah, and I would say that habit, unfortunately or fortunately, it has to stay with you after graduation, right? You had a huge grind, right? And the worst that can happen, and sometimes it does happen, you've spent so much time learning like crazy, after work, you're graduating and you're like, oh my God, I'm done, I'm finished. And you can't. You just can't. And I tell actually graduates now, when we are in the graduation, the first thing I'm looking at as a hiring manager is your GitHub and how many green dots you have in there. And if it's not, full of green dots, like you haven't committed in like almost every week, then I don't know if I'm going to look further than that.
I remember you telling me that, and I would constantly check my GitHub. I'm like, did I commit anything in December? I have to do something. I have to find something to do.
You have to, because it's the very first signal that hiring managers are looking at. And the first signal has to be a good one, right? Otherwise,
these are all of the things that you get when you join Newcamp. You get all these little insights, and I know that there's some mentorship going on now as well. So you have mentorship. I mean, Newcamp is a win-win. It is.
So what will be your advice to beginners, since you've been there, you've done that?
It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's to transition to a technical field that you know nothing about. It's going to take a lot of studying. It's going to take a lot of reading. It's going to take a lot of listening. It's going to take a lot of practicing. It's going to take a lot of your time. I would say a good year after graduating Newcamp, I'm still grinding. So it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of your time. So be prepared for that.
Maybe a kind of a plug. So we've just launched the Python Bootcamp. I don't know if you saw that. We had just one curriculum for a while, the one that you attended, and we just launched the Python Bootcamp, which is a backend bootcamp. So if you're thinking about doing more backend, you can sign up for that. But we were pretty happy with it. The feedback so far is great, and with that, we've actually tried something a little bit new, which is when we designed the Python curriculum, we designed it in a way that will complement the full stack one that you attended. And so now we're also offering students to enroll for the whole thing. And the whole thing is like 11 months long, 1,400 hours long. And you learn, React, Bootstrap, Node.js, MongoDB. And then you're going to learn Python, PostgreSQL. We touch on AWS as well, pretty big, Azure as well. And so we're going to have a full, the full thing now, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah. That is pretty exciting. And for the beginners, you don't have to start there, but it's good to know that you can work your way all the way up through Newcamp to your job. Yeah. That's all good stuff. I wish I had taken the backend course now that I am a developer. I really wish I had. I truly appreciate Newcamp for changing the game and making it possible for anyone to afford a bootcamp. I highly recommend their beginner course. And if you do enroll, please support this channel by using our referral code. Place it in the description box below. And I'll see you next time. Bye.